So you're asked to give a presentation and your mind immediately goes blank. Not because you don't know the material, you know it better than anyone, but the thought of standing up in front of people, trying to get your words out clearly, having all those eyes on you makes your palms sweat and your heart race. Or maybe you're in a heated discussion with a family member and suddenly you're not the calm, rational person you want to be. You're angry, reactive, saying things that you'll regret later. And afterwards, you think, why can't I control my temper? Why do I always mess things up when it matters most? We all have that thing about ourselves that we think disqualifies us from being used by God, that flaw, that weakness, that embarrassing trait we wish we can change. What if I told you that God specializes in using people not despite their weaknesses, but because of them? I've been thinking lately about things we hate most about ourselves. Those personal flaws that make us cringe, the weaknesses that we're convinced disqualify us from doing anything meaningful with our lives. Maybe it's a speech impediment that makes you avoid speaking in public. Maybe it's a quick temper that seems to flare up at the worst possible moments. Maybe it's social anxiety that makes networking events feel like torture. Maybe it's dyslexia that makes you feel stupid even though you're brilliant. Maybe it's depression that makes you feel like you're not strong enough to help anyone else. We live in a culture obsessed with perfection, where social media shows us everyone's highlight reels when we're intimately familiar with our own behind-the-scenes struggles. We see polished speakers, calm leaders, confident entrepreneurs, and we think, I can never do that, not with my issues, not with my problems. Statistics Canada reports that 76% of working age Canadians have experienced some form of workplace anxiety, with many citing fear of public speaking as a primary concern. But here's what's interesting. Some of the most effective communicators in history struggled with speech-related challenges. I think I know people who are gifted, but who've convinced themselves that they can't pursue their dreams because of their perceived flaws. The teacher that won't apply for principal positions because she stutters sometimes. The activist who avoids leadership roles because he's worried about his anger issues. The writer who won't share her work because dyslexia makes her feel like she's not smart enough. And the really heartbreaking part is that while we're busy disqualifying ourselves because of our weaknesses, the world is missing out on unique contributions. Problems go unsolved, voices go unheard, gifts go unused, all because we've convinced ourselves that our flaws make us unfit for service. But what if we've got this completely upside down? What if the very things we see as disqualifying are actually the things that make us most effective? What if our struggles give us empathy? What if our failures teach us humility? What if our weaknesses force us to depend on something bigger than ourselves? There's a Bible story about someone who had every reason to believe his personal flaws made him the worst possible candidate for the job God was calling him to do. Someone whose biggest weakness seemed to directly contradict his biggest calling. But what happened to him completely changed my understanding of how God uses imperfect people to do perfect work. Brene Brown puts it this way: vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Sometimes our greatest strength comes not from hiding our weaknesses, but from being honest about them and moving forward anyway.
Every day, Hope Channel Canada is transforming lives with health, love, and salvation. Together, we are creating a ripple effect that spreads hope across the nation. Now we invite you to become an agent of hope in Canada. Whether it's through prayer, volunteering, or your financial support, your involvement creates a larger wave of change. Like puzzle pieces coming together, every small act contributes to a bigger picture of hope. So visit agentsofhope.ca or call 1-855-4-HOPE-TV to join the movement. Thank you for sharing hope with us.
The man I want to tell you about grew up as a prince of Egypt, but he was actually a Hebrew boy by birth. His name was Moses, and by the time we meet him in his adult years, he's made some serious mistakes that have completely derailed his life. See, Moses had a temper problem, a big one. He once saw an Egyptian slave master beating a Hebrew worker and he completely lost it. He killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand thinking no one would find out. But word got around, Pharaoh wanted him dead, and Moses had to flee Egypt and become a refugee in the desert. For the next 40 years, Moses lived as a shepherd in the wilderness, probably thinking his life was over. He'd gone from prince to nobody, from palace to pasture, from having everything to starting over with nothing. And it was probably during those long, lonely years that his other big problem became apparent. He had a speech impediment. When God finally shows up to call Moses to his life's work, Moses is about 80 years old, watching sheep in the middle of nowhere, and probably convinced that his best days are behind him, but God had different plans. It starts with a burning bush, a bush that's on fire but not burning up. When Moses goes to investigate, God speaks to him. I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering, so I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of the land into good and spacious land. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people out of Egypt. Think about this assignment for a minute. God is asking Moses to go back to Egypt where he was a wanted man. He's asking him to confront Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler in the world. He's asking him to lead an entire nation out of slavery. This is no small task. And Moses' response? But who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? I like his honesty here. He's not trying to sound spiritual or confident. He's basically saying, God, have you seen my resume lately? Have you forgotten what happened the last time I tried to help my people? Have you noticed that I'm a wanted fugitive with anger management issues living here in the middle of nowhere? But God doesn't argue with Moses about his qualifications. Instead, God simply says, I will be with you. The same response he gave to Gideon. The qualification isn't Moses' perfection or capability, it's God's presence. But Moses isn't convinced. He keeps making excuses, and eventually he gets to the big one, the thing he's most embarrassed about and most insecure about. Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Moses has a stutter or some other form of speech impediment, and God is asking him to be a spokesperson, a communicator, a leader who needs to give speeches and negotiate with people. From Moses' perspective, that's like asking someone who's afraid of heights to become a pilot, or asking someone who can't swim to become a lifeguard. But here's God's response, and it's one of the most important verses in the Bible. Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what you say. God isn't surprised by Moses' speech impediment. God didn't miss that detail when he was choosing Moses for this job. In fact, God made Moses exactly the way he is, speech impediment and all, because that's exactly the person he wanted for this assignment. This completely flips our understanding of weakness and strength. We think God chooses people despite their flaws, but Moses' story suggests that God chooses people because of their flaws, because their weaknesses will force them to depend on him, because their struggles will give them empathy for others, because their imperfections will keep them humble. But Moses still isn't convinced. He's so focused on his weakness that he can't see how God might use it. So he makes one last desperate plea. Lord, please send anyone else. I feel for the guy here. He's been given the opportunity of a lifetime, but all he can think about is how he's going to mess it up. How many of us have done the same thing? How many times have we been offered opportunities and immediately started listing all the reasons why we're not qualified? And God gets a little frustrated with Moses at this point. The text says the Lord's anger burned against Moses. But even in his frustration, God provides a solution. He tells Moses that his brother Aaron can be his spokesperson. Moses can tell Aaron what to say, and Aaron can do the public speaking. But here's what's interesting. As the story progresses, Moses gradually becomes more confident in his own communication abilities. By the end of his life, he's giving lengthy speeches to entire nations. His entire speech impediment doesn't disappear, but he learns to work with it rather than be paralyzed by it. And his anger problem, God doesn't remove that either. Moses continues to struggle with it, with his temper throughout his life. There are times when his anger gets him in trouble, times when it causes problems, but there are also times when his righteous anger is exactly what the situation needs, when injustice requires someone who's willing to get fired up about it. What Moses discovers is that God doesn't need perfect people to do his work. God uses real people with real flaws, real struggles, real weaknesses, and sometimes those very weaknesses become the source of their greatest strength. Think about how Moses' speech impediment might have actually helped him as a leader. Because he struggled with communication, he had to listen more carefully to others because he couldn't rely on smooth talking. He had to rely on authenticity and substance. Because he knew what it felt like to be looked down upon for a disability, he had empathy for others who were marginalized and oppressed. And his anger, while it sometimes got him in trouble, it also fueled his passion for justice. Moses got angry at the right things: slavery, oppression, injustice. His anger motivated him to take risks, to challenge powerful people, to fight for what was right even when it was dangerous. James Earl Jones, who became one of the most recognizable voices in entertainment as the voice of Darth Vader and Mufasa from Lion King, struggled with a severe stutter as a child and teenager. And he was so self-conscious about his speech that he barely spoke for several years. But eventually, he learned to use his voice as a strength rather than hide from his weakness. The point isn't that our weaknesses magically become our strengths. The point is that God can use our weaknesses in ways we never imagined, and that our struggles often prepare us for purposes we couldn't have anticipated. Moses' story also shows us that leadership often requires us to do things that don't come naturally to us. Moses wasn't a natural public speaker, but he became one of history's greatest communicators. He wasn't naturally patient, but he learned to lead a difficult people through 40 years in the wilderness. He wasn't born confident, but he grew into someone who could stand up to the most powerful rulers of his time. This is encouraging for those of us who feel like we don't have the power or we don't have what it takes to pursue our dreams or answer our calling. Maybe you're not naturally outgoing, but God is calling you to a role that requires interaction with people. Maybe you're not naturally organized, but you have a vision that requires management skills. Maybe you're not naturally confident, but you have ideas that need to be shared with the world. Moses' story suggests that God often calls us to do things that will require us to grow, to develop new skills, to stretch beyond comfort zones. Our current limitations don't disqualify us from future possibilities. But let's acknowledge something else that's important. It's about Moses' journey. It wasn't easy. He was faced with constant criticism, ongoing challenges, repeated failures. Leading people is hard work, especially when those people are difficult, demanding, and sometimes ungrateful. Moses got discouraged, frustrated, overwhelmed. There were times when he wanted to quit. And this is so important to remember because sometimes we think that if God calls us to do something, it should feel easy or natural. But Moses' experience shows us that calling and capability are two different things. You can be called to do something that's difficult to you, something that will require you to grow and stretch and learn new skills. And sometimes the very thing that makes something difficult for us are the things that make us effective at it. Moses' struggles with communication forced him to think carefully about his words, to rely on others for help, to develop depth and substance rather than just style.
Hello, good to see you today here at the Lenses of Love set. I love to watch Sam's message and learn from him how to see God and His Word through the lenses of love. Perhaps you would like to learn more about other questions of life. For example, why am I here? Is there a God? Why is there so much evil and suffering? And why are there so many different religions? And which one is true? Is the Bible fact or fiction? Who is Jesus of Nazareth? Was he truly God as Christians say he is? Why did Jesus come to earth to die? And how does his death offer us salvation? What happens when I die? Is there really a heaven or a hell? These questions and others we answer on our online Bible study platform at hopestudy.ca. There, you will find answers to these and other crucial life questions. We would love to hear from you. Please email us at hopestudy@hopetv.ca. And remember, there is hope and answers to life's biggest questions in the Word of God.
As Moses' story unfolds, we see him gradually growing into his calling. He doesn't become perfect. He continues to struggle with anger, with discouragement, with the overwhelming nature of his responsibilities. But he learns to work with his weaknesses rather than be defeated by them. One of the most powerful moments in Moses' story comes near the end of his life. After 40 years of leading the Israelites through the wilderness, dealing with their complaints and rebellions and demands, Moses is finally ready to pass the leadership torch to someone else. And what does he do? He gives a series of speeches, long, detailed, passionate speeches that make up most of the book of Deuteronomy. The man who once said, "I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled," ends his career by delivering some of the most eloquent and moving addresses in all of literature. This doesn't mean his speech impediment disappeared. It means he learned that his calling was bigger than his limitations, that God's power could work through his weaknesses, that his struggles didn't disqualify him from his service. Moses' anger also evolved throughout his story. Early in his life, his anger was impulsive and destructive. It led him to murder and exile. But later, his anger became channeled into righteous indignation about injustice, into passionate advocacy for the oppressed, into the kind of holy fury that motivates people to fight for what's right. The same personality trait that got him in trouble became the source of his greatest strength. His anger didn't disappear. It was transformed and redirected toward purposes that mattered. So what is this story? What does Moses' story mean for us who are trying to figure out how to live with our own flaws and weaknesses? Well, first, it means that God isn't surprised by our struggles. He knows about our anger issues, our anxiety, our learning disabilities, our social awkwardness, our perfectionism, our depression, and He's not waiting for us to fix these things before He can use us. Second, it means that our weaknesses often prepare us for our purposes in ways we don't realize. Moses' speech impediment taught him to listen, to carefully think about his words, to rely on others for help. His anger gave him passion for justice. His experience as a refugee gave him empathy for the oppressed. Third, it means that growth and calling often go hand in hand. God doesn't call us because we're already perfect for the job. He calls us and then grows us into the job. Moses became a great communicator not despite his speech impediment, but through learning to work through it. Fourth, it means that our flaws can actually make us more effective, not less. People trust leaders who are honest about their struggles. They relate to speakers who aren't perfectly polished. They follow people who understand what it's like to face challenges and overcome them. Finally, it means that we don't have to wait until we've conquered all our weaknesses before we can start serving others. Moses didn't wait until his speech was perfect or until his anger was completely under control. He started where he was with what he had and let God do the rest. I think about the people who I know that have turned their struggles into their mission. The person with ADHD who now helps kids with learning differences. The former addict who now runs recovery programs. The survivor of abuse who advocates for others in similar situations. Their wounds became their wisdom. Their pain became their purpose. This doesn't mean we should celebrate our flaws or avoid working on our issues. It means we don't have to be ashamed of them and we don't have to let them stop us from pursuing our calling. I think about all the people I know who are sitting on the sidelines, convinced that their flaws disqualify them from making a meaningful contribution to the world. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been telling yourself that you can't pursue your dreams because of your anxiety, because of your learning disability, because of your speech impediment, because of your past mistakes or your current struggles. Maybe you've been waiting to get your act together before you can start helping others. Maybe you've been convinced that God can only use people who have their lives perfectly organized, their emotions completely under control, their skills fully developed. And here's what I want you to know. God isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for willing people. He's not waiting for you to fix all your flaws before he can use you. He wants to use you exactly as you are, struggles and all. Your speech impediment might make you a more thoughtful communicator. Your anxiety might give you more empathy for those who struggle. Your learning disability might help you find creative solutions that others miss. Your anger might fuel your passion for justice. Your depression might deepen your compassion for those who are hurting. The very thing you're most ashamed of might be the thing that makes you most effective. The weakness you've been trying to hide might be the strength you need to embrace. The struggle you've been fighting might be the gift you need to offer. Maybe it's time to stop seeing your flaws as disqualifications and start seeing them as qualifications. Maybe it's time to stop waiting for perfection and start moving forward with your imperfections. Maybe it's time to stop hiding your struggles and start using them to help others. Moses never became a perfect speaker, but he became an authentic one. He never completely conquered his anger, but he learned to channel it toward justice. He never stopped struggling, but he stopped letting his struggles stop him. The world needs what you have to offer, not the perfect version of you that doesn't exist, the real version of you that does. Your unique combination of gifts and struggles, strengths and weaknesses, successes and failures, that's exactly what someone somewhere needs to see. Stop waiting for permission from your perfectionism. Stop letting your flaws make your decisions. Stop believing that you're the exception to God's grace, the one person whose struggles are too big for his purposes. Someone needs to hear from the person who understands their speech anxiety because you've been there. Someone needs leadership from the person who knows what it's like to struggle with anger because you fought that battle. Someone needs encouragement from the person who's learned to work with their weaknesses rather than be defeated by them. Through these lenses of love, seeing our weaknesses as preparation rather than disqualification, our struggles as qualifications rather than limitations, our flaws as a part of our calling rather than obstacles to it, we discover that God doesn't just love us despite our imperfections, He wants to use us because of them. Your burning bush is waiting. Your people are waiting. Your purpose is waiting. And God is not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be willing, to be available, to show up with your struggles and let Him do the rest. The hothead with the stutter became one of history's greatest leaders. What might God do with your struggles if you stopped hiding them and started offering them?
All of my creation was a gift. I had you in my mind in each detail. And as I contemplated the work of my hands, I realized with me you could not fail. Then you turned back and walked away. You wander on your own to be free. And now I see the distance that keeps us apart. scars on my hand, I haven't changed. I'm still the same as always. I'm so full of love. Come back to me, because I'm still the same. Every time I take a look at you, I realize that you are my work of art. I see the perfect traces that I have designed. Though you're away, you're always in my heart. I haven't changed. I'm still the same as always. My arms are open wide. I'm waiting. I still bear the scars on my hand. I haven't changed. I'm still the same as always. I'm so full of love. Come back to me, because I'm still the same. I'm still the same as always. I'm so full of love. Come back to me, because I'm still the same. The same. I haven't changed. I'm still the same as always. My arms are open wide. I'm waiting. I still bear the scars on my hand. I haven't changed. I'm still the same as always. I'm so full of love. Come back to me, because I'm still the same. I'm still the same as always. I'm so full of love. Come back to me,